Part 12. Holy Dragon Totem. Author, Fengqing Yang. Chapter 111. The remaining 6 people in Yongle and Nangong Shuiying's team have all pursued in the wrong direction, getting further and further away. The priests did not remind them that they all appeared around Zhangzizhe, Yongle, and Nangong Shuiying. Taiwan Novel Network Rightward Arrow. Only a few priests paid attention to thousands of them carrying 30 sacrificial flags. Zhangzizhe suddenly stopped, and they wanted to see what he was going to do. The people present were all worshipping the temple, and everyone was relatively harmonious. However, when it came to Tai Chi, even the priests would inevitably ridicule each other and fight openly and secretly. Nangong Shuiying, if we take down Zhangzizhe, then we can decide the winner. Yongle and Zhongjing stood together and said to Nangong Shuiying and Yu Chiwei. Yu Chiwei and Nangong Shuiying looked at each other. They really didn't expect that Zhangzizhe would move the sacrificial flag. For Nangong Shuiying, finding thousands of sacrificial flags in one day is more difficult than climbing to the sky. Obviously, Wan Qian is away from Zhangzizhe, and his mission is to preserve the sacrificial flag. It is impossible for him to appear again. Yu Chiwei leaned down and said to Nangong Shuiying. Nangong Shuiying nodded slightly, her eyes were cold, and she said, Yongle, I am not a fool. If Zhangzizhe is defeated, you will definitely take the opportunity to escape. It is not difficult to inflict an injury on a person that leaves him unable to move for a day. Yongle frowned. Zhangzizi smiled inwardly, knowing that the opportunity had come. Then let's do this. Let's work together and divide the sacrificial flag on Yongle's body. If we don't break the current situation quickly, he will become the winner. Nangong Shuiying looked over, a little shocked, and asked, Are you talking to me? She didn't expect that Zhangzizhe would join forces with him. She glanced at Baishanjin, and she knew in her heart that Baishanjin must hate her now. Acting, Zhangzizhe poked Baishanjin in the waist. Boss, you are so mean. Baishanjin didn't understand why he actually asked himself to play the role of an infatuated man who refused to repent even after being beaten. However, he quickly entered the state and said, Shuiying, he wants to find one of you to join forces. I asked him to find you. Whichever of our 2 teams gets Tai Chi is better than Yongle. Moreover, he now is the one with the most advantage. Nangong Shuiying's eyes hesitated. Yu Chiwei said, Shuiying, this Zhangzizhe is very cunning, I can't believe it. This toad beat me up, he will definitely hate you. Don't fall for the trap. Nangong Shuiying asked back, what else? Join forces with Yongle to deal with him. Doesn't that mean giving Tai Chi to Yongle? He doesn't have a sacrificial flag on him now, so there is no gain at all from beating him. Or, wait for him to join forces with Yongle to divide us the sacrificial flag. This kid has no ability. Although his ability is average, the remaining people have obviously lost track of him. There are only 6 of them now. Even if the 2 of them add up to 1,000,000 kills, if he and Yongle join forces, they can bring us overwhelming trouble. Nangong Shuiying is very thoughtful. Yu Chiwei looked around, but he didn't expect that he was too anxious to chase and lost the others. He couldn't shout loudly now, which would cause more trouble for others. The top priority for the 3 parties is to find someone to join forces. Nangong Shuiying knew it very well. Yongle is the most advantageous party, so he would have been targeted. The key is that Zhangzizhe let Wan Qian take away the sacrificial flag, making him someone among the 3 forces who would not be targeted at all, so Nangong Shuiying should be the first to join forces with him. Otherwise, it would be like giving help to Yongle. Although she knew that Zhangzizhe's target was either of their sacred flags, after defeating Yongle, she would definitely have to rely on her true skills to snatch them. It depends on who grabs the most. Zhangzizhe also relied on this desperate method to make his final fight. Nangong Shuiying and Yu Chiwei already knew it. If you don't want to, I will ask Yang'el to divide your sacrificial flag, Zhang Zizai said directly and openly. Bai Shenjin's face was filled with infatuation, and he said, Shuiying, believe him, let's defeat Yang'el first. When the time comes, he will naturally rely on his true skills to compete with you for Yang'el's sacrificial flag. If the situation is not changed, Yang'el will take advantage of him. Nangong Shuiying stared at him and asked, are you really willing to let me get Tai Chi? I think there must have been a misunderstanding that day, and you must have some reasons. Of course, the boss is also very kind to me. I hope you can join forces. Anyway, Yang'el cannot get it? I can accept it if any of you get it. Bai Shenjin. He was deeply impressed by Zhang Zizai's true biography. Even though he had given up in his heart, his expression was still well acted. Zhang Zizai, I agree. After some quick communication and thinking, Nangong Shuiying really had some courage and agreed to Zhang Zizai's alliance but rejected Yang'el's. Yang'el finally understood. He knew that these three parties had formed an alliance, and Zhang Zizai had become a fragrant steamed bun inexplicably. He quickly said, Zhang Zizai, I can also join forces with you to defeat Nangong Shuiying. Finally, let's see who can do it based on my ability. Grab a lot. Zhang Zizai smiled bitterly and said, I thought so too, but it's a pity that my brother didn't agree. He's an infatuated man. There's nothing I can do about it. The temptation of beauty is so great. Who told you Yang'el isn't a beauty? Yang'el gritted his teeth. He clearly found that he had become the target of Zhang Zizai and Nangong Shuiying. He was not afraid of Zhang Zizai, but the current situation, an opponent equivalent to the level of Wanxia, plus Nangong Shuiying, would put him in a huge passive position. Go. He and Zhang Jing looked at each other, and now running away is the best choice. This chapter is not over, please click on the next page to continue reading. Want to go? Zhang Zizai, Bai Shenjin, Nangong Shuiying, and Yuqi Wei had guessed his move long ago. Before taking action, Nangong Shuiying glanced at Bai Shenjin, and what she saw was that Bai Shenjin also looked at her deeply, still as serious and persistent as before. She was annoyed, but it was not easy to show it at this time, so she could only smile stiffly at him, and Bai Shenjin immediately showed a happy smile, chasing people like chicken blood. If you get Tai Chi, I'm afraid I have to let him give up again. She knew that Bai Shenjin would inevitably misunderstand that there would be a chance between them. She and Zhang Zizai had a good understanding and chased after Yang'el, who had the flag of offering sacrifices to the gods. Zhang Jing wanted to stop him, but was immediately restrained by Bai Shenjin and Yuqi Wei. He wanted to be the last one to leave, but it was impossible. Zhang Zizai and Nangong Shuiying passed him in an instant. Yuqi Wei glanced at Bai Shenjin. He didn't expect that he would join forces with him today. Quickly deal with Zhang Jing and help Shuiying. With this in mind, he had to join forces with Bai Shenjin, the son of a mortal insect. He didn't expect that Bai Shenjin would be so strong when he really fought. The wind and fire domain directly covered Zhang Jing's head, directly making him in the burning fire. He couldn't support Yang'el, let alone escape. You're not bad. Yuqi Wei awakened the golden holy lion totem and headed towards Zhang Jing. On the opposite side, Zhang Jing held a big knife in his hand, and slashed violently, but before he hit Yuqi Wei, he was engulfed by the firestorm. It's good to know. One day, I will return the shame of that day to you. Bai Shenjin manipulated the wind and fire and said coldly. How shameless! If he hadn't joined forces with him, Yuqi Wei would have left. The priests all knew that it was no problem for the two of them to deal with Zhang Jing. On the other side, Zhang Zizai was like a cheetah in the jungle. In a very short time, he burst out at a speed and intercepted in front of Yang'el. How can you be so fast? Yang'el knew that if Zhang Zizai was at this speed at the beginning, they would not be able to catch up with him at all. Zhang Zizai smiled and said, I personally drew the acceleration talisman, 100 third-grade spirit stones each. Do you want a few? Buy now and use it now. Yang squinted at him, his back was already extremely cold, he knew that Nangong Shuiying was already standing behind him. Holy Dragon Totem. Author, Fengqing Yang. Chapter 112. Shameless. Seeing that his priest was besieged by two people, his original advantage suddenly turned into a disadvantage. Jian Nankai punched the tree next to him angrily. His sharp eyes glanced at Zhu Xian. What are you looking at? Have you never seen a beauty? Zhu Xian glared at him. That priest of yours is so despicable and shameless, and his methods are so rich. Jian Nankai looked down upon these tricks, but the current situation made him feel aggrieved. Feng Qingxian was also a little stunned. She didn't expect that her priest would actually join forces with the Zhu Xian's priest. Zhu Xian was too lazy to pay attention to him and stared at the battlefield intently. Nangong Shuiying is okay. It's as if Zhang Zizai has joined. It's still too early to defeat Yang'el. Although Jian Nankai was disdainful, he didn't seem to think that Yang'el would be defeated. That's not necessarily the case. Shuiying just needs a little help. In fact, Feng Qingxian is quite satisfied with this alliance. Yang'el originally had the best chance, but now the situation has changed. As long as Yang'el is defeated, Nangong Shuiying will have the best chance and get the most sacrifice flags. Although Zhang Zizai had won the opportunity, his hopes were much lower than Nangong Shuiying's due to the limitations of his own strength. Yang'el's chance lies in escaping. As long as he escapes, he still has the best chance. Now, even the Xinyao divine attendant remained silent and watched the whole battle. Brother Zizai is really smart. Princess Shenxiao turned around and said to Qin Qin. The woman in black skirt nodded. In fact, the priests pay attention to her every move, and no one will forget that she is the biggest enemy of the Six Palaces festival in the Temple of Sacrifice. Moreover, she can now clearly see the details of the sacrifice temple. Amid the undercurrent of the priests, Zhang Zizai and Nangong Shuiying launched an attack on Yang'el at the same time. Zhang Zizai finally knew why Baishanjin said that he and Nangong Shuiying were a good match. This totem of Nangong Shuiying is called the Blizzard Kunpeng totem. It is said that her father is from the Tianpeng tribe and inherited the Peng totem, while her mother's totem is a fish named Kun. As a rare case, she inherited the totems of both parents. Her totem actually has two forms, namely Kunpeng, which can be switched and changed. Its totem attributes also include wind and snow. The wind is Peng and the snow is Kun. The wind and snow are one, and the wind and fire of Baishanjin are one, so similar. And her totem characteristic is the field of wind and snow. Behind Yang'el, there was a pair of wings made of snowflakes behind Nangong Shuiying. When they flapped, wind and snow swept over them, turning the area around her into a world of ice and snow. Those damp trees quickly froze into ice, and Zhang Zizai seemed to have suddenly arrived in the world of ice and snow in the north, which was frighteningly cold. There was a lot of frost even on her skin. She is like a goddess of ice and snow, descending on the battlefield. Coincidentally, Baishanjin on the other side is like the male god of fire, controlling the field of wind and fire, but his scale is smaller than Nangong Shuiying's. After all, his realm is inferior. Baishanjin was born as a commoner, and with such means, if he had a good background, he would probably be about the same as Shuiying now. Even Xinyao divine attendant said this with certainty. No wonder Baishanjin always thinks that he and Nangong Shuiying are a perfect match. Unfortunately, a perfect match may not necessarily mean that they belong to the same world. Of course, Nangong Shuiying is so powerful, and Yang'el is also good. The life-killing halberd totem from his ancestors makes him a born strong warrior. When he was sealed in this ice and snow realm, he naturally chose to fight. Deep down in his bones, he was also filled with arrogance. What he is holding is a black halberd. There is a spear in the middle of the halberd, and there are crescent blades on both sides. It is completely black and has dense totem patterns on it. It is said that this is the moon given to him by the Shenbing clan. The super totem weapon is specially forged by a moon-level totem spiritual master. It is quite powerful, especially when combined with the halberd totem. Yang'el named it, Killing Halberd. Universe, Sun, Moon, and Stars. This is the moon-level totem weapon, the star-level totem weapon fire source gun that surpasses Zhangzai. Zhangzai, in this ice and snow realm, the first thing Yang'el locked onto was Zhangzai in front of him. He understood that being besieged by two people, he had to defeat the weak one now, otherwise he would have no chance of winning if he kept entangled. Yang'el held the killing halberd, roared low, and was as domineering as a wild beast. He endured the cold and stepped towards Zhangzai to kill. Zhangzai held the fire source gun in front of him. He entered the state instantly, tapped his feet lightly, and killed Yang'el in an instant. Look at the speed, it was faster than Yang'el. People thought that such a battle would be fought with Zhangzai as an assistant and Nangong Shuiying attacking from the front. Unexpectedly, it was not the case at all. Zhangzai seemed to be very cunning, but at this time he took the initiative and killed Yang'el on the frontal battlefield. How powerful is the Tianqian Fire Dragon Qi? Zhangzai knew immediately. When he held the fire source gun, the fire source gun was burning with black flames. There was even a vague flame on his skin. Above his eyebrows, the black dragon totem appeared again and again. The manifestation and shock made him the king of this hunting field. Bang bang bang. Yang'el used the heaven-splitting killing technique, and with this battle technique, he clashed head-on with Zhangzai's bolide spear several times. The collision of the weapons produced a harsh scream. Every time, he was the toughest. In a head-on confrontation, 3 times in a row, both sides retreated. Yang'el stood stunned on the spot. His sky-splitting killing technique, he launched a series of attacks again, each time more domineering than the last, but he failed to repel Zhangzai at all. Evenly matched. How is that possible? Yang'el looked at him with wide eyes. In fact, not only him, but also all the priests and Yuanqing were stunned. This was an unimaginable scene for them, so Juxian smiled coquettishly and said, "This little guy knows how to choose the right moment to shock everyone." Behind Yang'el, Nangong Shuiying, who was originally going to save Zhangzai, was stunned at this time. She knew that Zhangzai was fully capable of fighting them a little. What puzzles Nangong Shuiying is that he has such ability. He can cover it up now, and then use his underestimation to defeat himself after defeating Yang'el. But Zhangzai didn't. He showed a fighting power comparable to the 3rd level of the mysterious vein realm on the spot, and in the blink of an eye, he took the initiative to use his physical skills to force Yang'el. "What are you doing? Do it." During this period, he also scolded Nangong Shuiying. You have to say, Nangong Shuiying came flying over, and countless ice and snowstorms rushed towards Yang'el who was fighting, making him shiver with cold and reduce his combat power. Yang'el's killing halberd totem, its totem characteristics are, killing. If he were to attack with his halberd or his true energy would stick to the body and corrode the flesh. This is a very powerful force. A close confrontation with him would be a nightmare for many people. This is also the capital of Yang'el. His heaven-splitting killing technique is extremely powerful, and the power of his life-killing halberd is very domineering. However, this time he met his opponent. His killing was indeed terrifying, but to him, what was even more terrifying was Zhangzai's infuriating burning. When the killing halberd hit the fire source gun, the flames of the fire source gun swept over. In an instant, his palms were smoking. The key is that behind him, Nangong Shuiying quickly came up to kill him, and her fingers were now like jade, piercing through him. Those are the 9 fingers of Frozen. Every time he thrust out a finger, a stream of ice and snow energy pierced Yang'el's acupuncture points. Coupled with the biting cold wave, Yang'el was like a world of ice and fire in an instant. He is going crazy. He knew what Nangong Shuiying was capable of, mainly because of Zhang Zi's sudden outburst, which quickly caused his heart to collapse. The strength of the three seemed to be about the same at this moment. 2 against 1, Yang Il will definitely lose. All the priests and Yuan Qing were stunned and saw this clearly. Zhang Zize is a late bloomer and extraordinary. The 9 Immortals priest has vision and courage. Yuan Qing Guyan gave a thumbs up to the 9 Immortals. His praise made other priests blush. Especially Enron. Thank you Yuan Qing for your compliment. I also have a priest named Lu Dingxing, a heaven-level totem, who is very interested in totem spiritual masters. Yuan Qing, do you want to help? Juxian's voice was coquettish, acting coquettishly towards the old man. Guyan's face suddenly turned dark. It's Lu Yuan's son again. If I had known earlier, he wouldn't have praised me, but now I feel like crying without tears. As long as he's qualified, I'll accept it. A headache, a real headache. There are 2 chapters today and 5 chapters will be updated at 12 p.m. as usual, that will be tomorrow's update. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Holy Dragon Totem. Author, Fengqing Yang. Chapter 113. Under the surprised eyes of the priests and Yuan Qing, Zhang Zize and Nangang Shuiying simply pressed Yang Il to the freezing point. One in front and one behind, 2 worlds of ice and fire. Zhang Zize fought head-on, Nangang Shuiying kept shooting cold arrows from behind, the ice was piercing, and Yang Il was trembling in the battle. This led to Yang Il's defeat faster than Zhang Zhengde. The reason why it was so fast was that he underestimated Zhang Zize. It was impossible for him to defeat the 2 of them one by one. Yang Il was a warrior, but it was a pity that warriors often ended up badly in such a duel of wits and courage. He was under great pressure from Zhang Zize, and his back was wide open. Nangang Shuiying's 9 icy fingers pierced his back, and even if there was armor, it was penetrated at this time. The ice froze, penetrated the blood, and froze the true qi. Zhang Zize was not worse than him, and now he was even more relaxed. Under the suppression of Nangang Shuiying, the opponent had less than half of his energy to deal with him, and his fire meteor spear technique easily penetrated the opponent. Puff puff puff. He pierced 3 blood holes in his legs in succession, quickly and accurately. Yang Il screamed, one leg was already soft, and blood was flowing. Yang Il, he was going to lose. Zhang Zize and Nangang Shuiying both noticed the sacrificial flag on him. Soon, they would compete for the sacrificial flag. Everyone wanted to take the initiative. After Zhang Zize showed his strong lethality, Yang Il's defeat and even elimination were not unexpected. But a new suspense was immediately born: who would grab more sacrificial flags? Despicable and shameless, Yang Il was furious. Even though one of his legs was already disabled, he was still resisting at this time. He was now extremely angry. It was estimated that even if he lost, he didn't want Zhang Zize and the others to have an easy time. At this time, Yang Il was still quite dangerous with the killing halberd sweeping and slashing. He especially hated Zhang Zize, who obviously disrupted his deployment. Don't hold on. Zhang Zize looked like a ghost. The mere Chen-level Wind Dragon Demon Shadow was in his display. The dragon shadows were heavy, and the storm caused could even compete with the storm in Nangang Shuiying's ice and snow field. Target, the flag of offering sacrifices to the gods. He and Nangang Shuiying both rushed up at this time. Next, it was inevitable to have a direct confrontation with Nangang Shuiying, and the alliance between the 2 sides was about to collapse. Yang Il. Unexpectedly, at this juncture, Zhang Jingde actually escaped from the joint efforts of Bai Shenjin and Yu Wei. He had some injuries and a lot of traces of burning from the flames, but it seemed that his combat effectiveness was not as severe as Yang Il's. At this difficult juncture, Yang Il saw Zhang Jingde escape, and without saying a word, he threw the flag of offering sacrifices to him. Run! This was Yang'el's last hope. He is here, entangled with Nangong Shuiying and Zhang Zizai. If Zhang Jing can escape, if Nangong Shuiying and Zhang Zizai cannot get each other's sacrificial flag in the last time, then he still has a chance to get Taiji. Zhang Jing successfully caught the sacrificial flag. At this time, he had a huge responsibility. He didn't care about Yang'el and ran away desperately. Want to run, Yuchi Wei chased him, and Bai Shenjin next to him flew up his wings and chased him. When the sacrificial flag was in Zhang Jing's hands, the situation changed again, and the siege of Yang'el was no longer effective. For Taiji, Yang'el burst out a terrible will at this time, dragging his severely injured leg, and intercepted Nangong Shuiying and Zhang Zizai alone. Nangong Shuiying saw it and said directly to Yuchi Wei, Zhang Jing must get the flag of offering sacrifices when he is exhausted. Obviously, in her opinion, Zhang Jing and Bai Shenjin at this time could not compete with Yuchi Wei. Yuchi Wei now was like a golden lion, the king of the jungle. Then, Nangong Shuiying herself had to bypass Yang'el and chase Zhang Jing. Yang'el saw it and immediately intercepted her in front of her, and held her back as long as he could. It was close to dusk at this time, and the fog had become heavier. If you miss a moment, you may lose the target. If you lose it, then you will fail. The night fell and the sky began to darken. This was the last night, and tomorrow morning was the deadline. Zhang Zizai saw that Yang'el actually intercepted Nangong Shuiying, who moved first. Of course, he seized this opportunity and immediately chased in the direction of Zhang Jing. Unexpectedly, before I ran far, a snowstorm swept outside. It turned out that Nangong Shuiying and Yang'el were chasing me at the same time. Stay. The two of them obviously didn't want any of the three people to join the battle on Zhang Jing's side. Yang'el is the last gamble, betting that Zhang Jing can escape. Betting that Nangong Shuiying and I can't get the other side's sacrificial flag. From the biggest advantage, now we can only take risks. Nangong Shuiying originally wanted to chase the sacrificial flag, but Yang'el wanted to restrict her. She also wanted to restrict me, because she felt that Yuchi Wei had the greatest chance of winning on that battlefield, so when she couldn't leave, she certainly couldn't let me go. These flashed through Zhang Zizai's mind. Yang'el, gambling. Nangong Shuiying, trusting Yuchi Wei. In her eyes, Bai Shenjin and the injured Zhang Jing would definitely not be able to compete with Yuchi Wei. Night is about to fall, and it will soon be the last moment. Now everyone wants to take a gamble. If any of the three wanted to catch up, they would be intercepted by the other two. The battlefield here was once again in a state of balance. The three could only fight while moving over there. Nangong Shuiying especially didn't want Zhang Zizai to go over there. She believed more in Yuchi Wei's chances of winning. Yuchi Wei's probability of getting the most sacrificial flags was higher than her probability of getting sacrificial flags in the competition with Zhang Zizai. This second son of the Southern King is so difficult to deal with. Nangong Shuiying's eyes were cold. She used the body method of Tianpeng Chaotic Shadow very quickly, but was entangled by Zhang Zizai's Wind Dragon Demon Shadow. As for Yang'el, he was just holding on. 60 breaths of time passed. It is very likely that the battle over there has already had a result. Many priests have gone there to see. The later the situation changes, the more thrilling it is. In this battle of Mist Island, a completely unexpected person has become the two people with the greatest hope at this time. Now Zhang Zizai has focused too much attention. The priests and Yuanqings have completely different eyes on this person. In the battle, Yang'el lost too much blood and fell down exhausted. Suddenly, a blood-stained voice appeared in the distance. Shuiying, we have all 36 sacrificial flags, let's go. It was actually Yuchi Wei. He was extremely excited and ran towards the side as if he was running for his life. Holy Dragon Totem. Author, Feng Qing Yang. Chapter 114. Nangong Shuiying was right about him. Now, her face was full of surprise. If Yangle's 36 sacrificial flags were all in his hands, then their team would already have more than 60 sacrificial flags, which was completely settled. Run away quickly, Nangong Shuiying couldn't understand why he was still running here. Although Yangle had withdrawn from the competition and fell to the ground unconscious, Zhang Zizai was still here. Yuji Wei should run somewhere else quickly, the farther the better. Of course, he had to let Nangong Shuiying know that the sacrificial flags had been obtained, and there was no need to entangle with Zhang Zizai. So at this time, Nangong Shuiying wanted to get away. Yuji Wei heard the arrangement and immediately ran to the side. It can be seen that his hair was now burnt, and he must have been through a fierce battle. Zhang Zizai was a little depressed. It seemed that Bai Shenjin had been defeated. This was indeed normal. His own strength was not as good as Yuji Wei and Zhang Zhengde. Yuji Wei, Zhang Zizai can't stop him alone, now his only way is to defeat Nangong Shuiying. Nangong Shuiying still has the sacrificial flag on her body. In a blink of an eye, Nangong Shuiying has the biggest advantage. She is now out of the battlefield and just wants to leave. She doesn't want to fight with Zhang Zizai at all. Next time, I will decide the winner with you, she looked at Zhang Zizai coldly, as cold as frost. Now, she doesn't want to take the risk of fighting with Zhang Zizai. Everyone saw that Nangong Shuiying got Tai Chi, which was already safe, and it was also what everyone expected. But what people never expected was that at this time, two figures quickly caught up with Yuji Wei who was fleeing. Or, Yuji Wei has been fleeing all the time, and he can't stop him at all, so he came to Nangong Shuiying, otherwise he has nowhere to go. Zhang Zizai saw it and smiled immediately. It was Bai Shenjin, and there was a short-haired boy in black clothes, Wanqian. He was actually nearby. Yuji Wei. Bai Shenjin's wind and fire domain directly covered Yuji Wei's head. Yuji Wei's injuries were all caused by him. Rage, burning. Bai Shenjin seemed to have returned to that day, the moment when he lost his dignity and was severely beaten. He remembered the cold eyes. He remembered their ridicule, the son of mortal insects, the toad, and remembered those contemptuous eyes. Even at this time, Yuji Wei's eyes were full of contempt. You think you can stop me, he roared and punched. Yuji Wei. Wanqian Piaran appeared, his eyes shining brightly, and the light pierced Yuji Wei's eyes. Ah, Yuji Wei covered his head, the sacrificial flag fell to the ground, and he screamed in pain. Wind and fire punch. Bai Shenjin finally waited for this moment. At the moment when Wan Qian's powerful force fixed his opponent, he completely hit Yuji Wei with a set of wind and fire punches. Yuji Wei groaned a few times, widened his eyes, and knelt softly in front of Bai Shenjin. Pa! Bai Shenjin slapped him, making half of his face red. Yuji Wei, this slap tells you that I, Bai Shenjin, am no worse than you. Bang! Yuji Wei's eyes turned white. He grabbed Bai Shenjin's collar and wanted to fight back, but Bai Shenjin slapped him to the ground again and stepped on his face a few times. Bai Shenjin, with trembling hands, took out a small package from his arms, which was full of spiritual stones. He smashed it on Yuji Wei's face with hatred. This is what you threw to me that day. Today, I will give it back to you. I have done a good thing, but you don't need to measure it with money. In order to return the spiritual stone to him, he waited for many days and nights. That day, when he picked up the bag of spiritual stones that Yuji Wei threw, he attracted countless ridicules, saying that he was a coward and a beggar. He didn't know shame when others threw money at him, and he actually picked it up. But only Zhang Zizai knew that he picked it up just to be able to return it to the other party openly one day, and today, he did it. Moreover, he picked up 36 sacrificial flags and hung them on his body. Behind them, Lu Dingxing and Ruo Xiaoyu also had 30 sacrificial flags on their bodies. Now Zhang Zizhe has 66 sacrificial flags. Although the time has not come, for now, their team is already the well-deserved king. Yuji Wei, foaming at the mouth, unconscious. Yang Il was dizzy and could only lean on the tree trunk and look at the battlefield. Nangong Shuiying stopped her action, and looked at Baishan Jin and Wanqian with complicated and trembling eyes, and quickly dealt with Yuji Wei. Yuji Wei had told her about the spirit stone. When she heard that Baishan Jin had picked up the spirit stone, she felt contempt. She didn't expect that he had waited for today. At this time, Baishan Jin and the other four came to Zhang Zizhe. Baishan Jin was also covered in blood and his hair was even more messy. He stared at Nangong Shuiying, held up the sacrificial flag in his hand, and said, "All of these are for you, but I have a condition." "What?" Nangong Shuiying's eyes were cold. "Sleep with me for one night." "Tai Chi is yours," Baishan Jin grinned. "You are looking for death," Nangong Shuiying was furious. "Just one night, a wild level totem, what a bargain. I know you are willing, but you are just a little shy, right?" Baishan Jin smiled. "You are really shameless, as expected, people of low status, dogs can't change their shit." Baishan Jin laughed dumbly and said, "So do you think you are a pile of shit?" He gritted his teeth and said, "Nangong Shuiying, I have understood it a long time ago. Yuji Wei didn't say that we are not from the same world. I was just daydreaming in the past. From now on, my name will never be associated with you again. You can enjoy your noble status with confidence." This chapter is not finished yet, please click on the next page to continue reading the exciting content. "But, Tai Chi belongs to our boss. You are a loser, haha." Before arriving at Kirishima, he didn't expect that there would be a day when he would say this. Zhang Zizhe laughed. He was right about these two guys. They were powerful enough at the critical moment, especially Wanqian, who asked him to stay away. As a result, he must be around. At the critical moment, he directly took away the 36 sacrificial flags to help Zhang Zizhe and completely reverse the situation. Nangong Shuiying was left alone. Loser. These three words, spoken from Baishan Jin's mouth, were so harsh. Nangong Shuiying admitted that the kindness she had received had brought her a great burden, and she had smiled at a person she despised for so long. It was only when he came to confess his love a while ago that she could not tolerate it. She did not expect that the young man she had instructed to humiliate would directly lead to her losing Tai Chi. She certainly would not accept such an important thing. "It's not the critical moment yet, don't be too happy," she stared at Zhang Zizhe. As long as she defeated Zhang Zizhe, no one could stop her with the remaining sacrificial flags. The rules were still fair. She still had time and a chance. "Baishan, come here." When Nangong Shuiying was about to take action, Zhang Zizhe called out. Nangong Shuiying couldn't believe it and said, "As a man, you dare not fight me alone." Zhang Zizhe curled his lips and laughed, "Do you think I'm stupid? Of course, siege is more fun than single combat. If you want single combat, I'll let you have enough when you return to the temple in a few days. Now, we are going to siege together." "What's the matter?" Shameless, even the priests admired. They did it so well. Feng Qingxuan's face turned pale. She was smiling just now, but now her face was as stinky as rotten garbage. On the contrary, Juxian next to her was so happy that she almost danced. She hummed a little song, and the graceful voice was obviously a protest, which could only make Jianan Kaiu, Anran, Feng Qingxian, and Jin Yuxuan look worse. Their disciples almost created Zhang Zizhe. He has already obtained the 66 sacrificial flags. At this time, he can take advantage of the advantages and hide directly. "Why is he still entangled?" Guyan asked. Xiao Yishan said, "You can't even guess this, you are old and confused. Zhang Zizhe wants to take all 99 sacrificial flags. Everyone knows his ambition, and it is even clearer when Xiaoyushan says it. With such a big appetite, don't you worry about capsizing in the gutter. Jian Nankai was very angry. Yang'el was obviously very strong, why did it develop into this? Who do you say is the gutter? Feng Qingxian was even more upset when he heard it. I guess he is talking about Nangong Shuiying. He Juxian watched the fun and laughed secretly, making Feng Qingxian even more angry. Shut up. Why are you so fierce? Be careful of early menopause, Juxian said aggrievedly. While they were still arguing, Juxian's sacrificial team surrounded Nangong Shuiying and was ready to beat her up. Fighting with more people, shameless. I don't know how many people cursed in their hearts. Holy Dragon Totem. Author, Feng Qingyang. Chapter 115. 4 big men plus a beautiful girl besieged another girl. Nangong Shuiying was extremely angry. These made her feel sick, especially Zhang Zizai and Bai Shenjin. It had been too long. I was afraid that I had forgotten the feeling of grabbing a life-saving straw in front of death. Now the more I look at Bai Shenjin's careless appearance, and then think about the fact that he lost Tai Chi because of himself. Only hatred arises spontaneously. You, the son of a mortal insect, dare to bully me like this. Aren't you afraid of a fire in the backyard? When Bai Shenjin surrounded her, Nangong Shuiying said in a deep voice. If it was just to deal with Zhang Zizai, she would not be afraid at all, but with Wanqian and Bai Shenjin harassing her, she naturally felt troubled. Shh, keep your voice down. Wanqia said the same thing in front of me last time, and the god servant was ready to expel him from the sacrifice temple, Bai Shenjin said with a smile. In fact, he must be heartbroken. He didn't expect that the goddess in his heart would threaten him with her parents. The image of her in her mind had collapsed countless times, and Bai Shenjin had become numb. Humph. Nangong Shuiying knew that since the other party had come up, it was actually equivalent to giving her a flaw, especially since Lu Dingxing and Bai Shenjin had the sacrificial flags on them. If she was not careful, she might be able to grab the sacrificial flags first and escape, completely turning the tables. The opponent's siege was also an opportunity for her. Nangong Shuiying's eyes flashed with a cold light, and the first person she targeted was Lu Dingxing. Before Zhang Zizai was surrounded by them and had not yet made a move, she suddenly moved, rolled up a large amount of ice and snowstorms, and swept towards Lu Dingxing. Wherever she went, even the trees were frozen. Buzz. She didn't expect that countless flames suddenly rushed from the side to fight against her ice storm. Although they couldn't fight against it, at least they offset a lot of her frost. Bai Shenjin overlapped the ice and snow field with the wind and fire field. Although it was greatly suppressed and consumed a lot, the raging of ice was also reduced by it. Be careful of Wan Qian's pupil technique, don't open your eyes. She thought so, but how could she fight Zhang Zizai without opening her eyes? Zhang Zizai appeared in front of her like a ghost, and the fire source gun in his hand turned into a flaming meteor, constantly poking. Nangong Shuiying had to open her eyes. Right behind Zhang Zizai, Wan Qian cast the Tianyi impact technique. Buzz. In an instant, her eyes stung, and the sky and the earth were dark, as if she was even more blind. She resisted frantically, trying to suppress Zhang Zizai with the ice and snow field, but the ice and snow field was offset by Bai Shenjin, and the power was no longer there. Go to hell. She was so frustrated that she was so angry that tears came out. Especially Bai Shenjin, who suppressed her best ice and snow field. When her advantage could not be brought into play, it was equivalent to losing her eyes. In front of Zhang Zizai, she was already a waste. Even though she fought hard with Tianpeng Chaos Shadow and Ice Nine Fingers, Zhang Zizai's cold spear tip still penetrated her defense and stabbed into her thigh for the first time. In this battle of Kiri's Hima, he could not kill anyone, so Zhang Zizai became a professional at stabbing thighs, and he hit the target every time. After hitting the target, he pressed down, and immediately made Nangong Shuiying half kneel on the ground, bleeding. Ah, the ice snow beauty screamed in pain, which made people feel distressed. Boss, don't be so cruel, Bai Shenjin still felt distressed when he saw it. Before he finished speaking, Zhang Zizai pulled out the fire source spear and stabbed her other round thigh again. This time, Nangong Shuiying could only kneel on the ground with both knees, crying in pain. Why didn't you say it earlier? Zhang Zizai picked up the last 33 sacrificial flags with the tip of his spear, and from then on, all 99 sacrificial flags were his. I'm just being kind to women, Bai Shenjin said distressedly, but in fact, he felt happy. This injury is not a problem. With her background, she can recover after a few days of rest with the help of spiritual medicine. It's just that she temporarily lost the support of her legs, couldn't move, and lost her combat effectiveness. Zhang Zizai. Bai Shenjin, Nangong Shuiying raised her head, wiped away her tears, and gritted her teeth. I swear, one day, I will kill you and make you pay with blood. Bai Shenjin was stunned and said, don't be like this, our priest said that we are all classmates, don't fight and kill all the time, it's unlucky. Now that you have won, do you want to be a villain in front of me? Nangong Shuiying stared at him. Bai Shenjin put away his smile, waved his hand, and said, why not, just regard it as a memorial to my pure admiration for you. From that day on, my heart is dead. Son of a mortal insect, wishful thinking, Nangong Shuiying did not forget to say such words until this time. Boss, let's go. Bai Shenjin was just acting very proud, but in fact, he was still upset in his heart. Why was he so blind that he used to think about how to treat her well day and night? Staying here and listening to her talk would only make him realize how stupid he was in the past. Let's go. Zhang Zizai gathered all the sacrificial flags and showed off in front of Nangong Shuiying and Yang'el, saying, I will accept your gifts. After returning the sacrificial flags, I will treat you two to a meal and thank you for your generosity on the spot for giving me Tai Chi, haha. Just after he finished speaking, he heard Wanqian say that other sacrificial followers were gathering here, so they hurried away. Now night has fallen. Just wait for one night, and by tomorrow morning, Tai Chi will be safe. That night, when they heard that Zhang Zizai had obtained 99 sacrificial flags, all the priests would go crazy and track him overnight. This chapter is not over yet, please click on the next page to continue reading the exciting content. Unfortunately, he has thousands of people around him. When Zhang Zizai left, leaving a few wounded here to cry without tears, the divine servants, Yuan Qing, and the priests obviously did not expect the final outcome to be like this. That Jian Nankai gritted his teeth and said, Master Divine Servant, I think it is not appropriate to hand over Tai Chi to Zhang Zizai. He relied on conspiracy and siege to get the sacrificial flags. At the 6 Prefectures festival, these little tricks are useless. Feng Qingxian also said, I also think it is a bit inappropriate. In terms of real combat power, fighting alone, Yang'el and Shuiying are better than him. The divine servants, Yuan Qing, and other priests all looked at the two of them with strange eyes. The star god servant glanced at them and said slowly, the disciple has been embarrassed enough, priest, please don't embarrass yourself again. Everyone has a sense of right and wrong. Zhang Zizai is a little clever, but in this absolutely fair battlefield, he can collect all the sacrificial flags in his hands. This is his own ability. Feng Qingxuan's face flushed. God servant, he is the son of King Zilan. King Zilan is a criminal of the dynasty and has not yet confessed. Do you really want this person to fight for my sacrifice temple? Now is a sensitive period. Do you want to take such a risk to fight against the Flame Dragon Emperor with the sacrifice flag? Jian Nankai also said. Enran wanted to speak, but he suddenly realized that there were other people present. Sure enough, the god servant pointed at Princess Shenxiao and said, the little girl dared to chase him here and followed him all the way. You, as priests of the sacrifice temple, are so cowardly. It is really amazing. The sacrifice temple only accepts geniuses favored by the ancient gods. As long as they have pure intentions, we don't care about their origins or backgrounds. This is the foundation of our sacrifice temple's eternal inheritance, not timidity. Jianan Kaiu, Feng Qingxian, reflect on yourself after you go back this time. The tone of the god servant was already quite cold. Even Princess Shenxiao was not afraid of the flame dragon emperor, but the two priests of the sacrifice temple said such words, which really violated the fundamental purpose of the sacrifice flag. The sacrifice temple serves the ancient gods, not the royal family. Jianan Kaiu and Nangong Shuiying finally shut up with a sullen face. Haha, when there was a dead silence, a crisp laugh suddenly sounded, which was very piercing. Everyone looked and saw that it was Juxian who was laughing so hard that his body was shaking. The atmosphere was serious and everyone looked at her. What are you looking at? I am the champion priest, can't I laugh? She was boasting, and Feng Qingxuan's face became darker. The divine servant said, there is not necessarily no variable in the last night. Patrol carefully tonight and do a good job of finishing. Tomorrow at noon, it will officially end, and the Tai Chi will be awarded on the spot, and we will set off to return to the Temple of Sacrifice. Yes. No one thought too much. Zhang Zizai had Wanqian's eyes, and it was no problem to protect the sacrificial flag for one night. Yang'el and Nangong Shuiying, one night is not enough to restore their combat effectiveness. At night, Zhang Zizai and the five of them put the sacrificial flag next to them in the new base, and waited for the passage of time with peace of mind. In the second half of the night, Wanqian practiced the pupil technique for half a day, and was a little tired, so he squinted for a while. Suddenly, a dark shadow came in quietly and hovered over Zhang Zizai's head. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Holy Dragon Totem. Author, Feng Qingyang. Chapter 116. Elder Brother. Zhang Zizai was still conceiving and cultivating the Tianqian fire dragon Qi when he suddenly heard a panicked scream from Ruo Xiaoyu. This scream was like thunder on the ground. Zhang Zizai was woken up by the explosion in an instant. He had no idea what was going on. Logically speaking, with thousands of people watching, it was impossible for anything to go wrong. Their current location is also very peripheral, close to the entrance to Kiri's Hima. He opens his eyes. At that moment, he saw Ruo Xiaoyu's face full of panic, staring at the top of his head with wide eyes. Overhead. At this moment, Lu Dingxing and the three of them were also awakened and looked over at the same time. Zhang Zizai suddenly raised his head. He actually saw a mass of black water above his head, condensing together, changing shape, twisting and turning. The moment Zhang Zizai raised his head, the ball of water suddenly fell on his body. The change was so sudden that he had no time to react. Spirit. Only then did Zhang Zizai remember that this was probably the spirit that the 9 Immortals were talking about before. Ascension Talisman. Lu Dingxing roared, and he suddenly stood up and rushed towards Zhang Zizai. Wan Qian quickly lit the Ascension Talisman outside, and a dazzling light rushed into the sky. Shen Yuanqing. Help, Wan Qian shouted directly into the night sky. The peaceful night was suddenly startled. At this time, Zhang Zizai was surrounded by the black water, as if he had been eaten. He didn't feel uncomfortable, but he soon discovered that after the water wrapped around his body, he couldn't move. All the muscles in the body are moved by others. He was completely controlled, and he suddenly stood up, then knocked away the approaching Lu Dingxing, turned into a black shadow, and rushed out of the cave at an unimaginable speed. The unimaginable oppression made Zhang Zizai completely unable to breathe. This was a power he had never imagined. Why did this monster come specifically to find me? He couldn't understand it at all. For such a long time, I have never heard of any disciple being caught by him. I guess I have forgotten all the strange things. Now under the control of this spirit, he soon became dizzy, exhausted, and his whole body weakened rapidly, making it difficult to stay awake. At the last moment, Zhang Zizai saw the 9 gods of Shen Yuanqing and suddenly intercepted them in front of him. He was slightly startled, then suddenly took action. Then, Zhang Zizai felt that his body was advancing at an unimaginable speed, escaping Shen Yuanqing's control, and in the blink of an eye, he merged into the darkness. Chase. Then, I heard a lot of noise. There seemed to be many people chasing behind him. He also heard a familiar and anxious voice. He couldn't tell what she was shouting, but Zhang Zizai knew that it must be Zhu Xian. She seemed to be crying. Disaster struck. It was unbelievable that he just lost consciousness in the endless exhaustion. It's that monster. Hurry up. It's gone, can't be found at all. 9 gods, you can't even stop me in front of you. In the dark night, the woman in the white dress looked at the man in grey robe with red eyes. It's so weird, I didn't expect it. I'll settle the score with you later. After she finished speaking, she quickly melted into the darkness and came back again after a while. Wan Qian, come with me. She pulled one of the teenagers away. Priest, we are going to stay there for now. She quickly disappeared into the night. The 9 gods hesitated for a moment, asked Qin Qin to protect Princess Shenxiao, and quickly disappeared into the darkness. Outside the cave, Ruo Xiaoyu's face was full of tears, and she clutched Lu Dingxing's clothes tightly. Xiaoyu, Boss Jiren has his own destiny, he will be fine. Bai Shenjin's throat was hoarse. Why does it have to be him? There are so many people. I can do it too. Why? Ruo Xiaoyu was extremely panicked and looked at the dark night in despair. Brother, you must live. Her small nails were pierced into her palms. With such a big movement, many priests and Yuanqing arrived, such as Xiao Yushan and others. After hearing what happened, they immediately joined the search. After the god attendant arrived, he announced, inform the priests to end the battle of Kiri's Hima in advance. All priests and priests, gather here. Then, she arranged several teams to go out to search for Zhang Zizai. When the priests and priests almost started to gather here, the priest herself also entered the darkness, and she probably joined the search. Feng Qingxian, Enran, Jian Nankaiu and others arrived late. Seeing that Jin Yuxuan had arrived first, they asked, Brother Jin, what happened in the rush of the divine servant? Jin Yuxuan said, I heard that the spirit that was rumored last time suddenly appeared and captured Zhang Zizai under the eyes of Shen Yuanqing. Now they are all chasing him. The divine servant considered the danger and based on the current special situation, so this test ended early. After the 3 people heard this, their expressions were a little strange. Feng Qingxian asked, are you sure it's Zhang Zizai? Of course it's him. Jian Nankaiu asked, what is the estimated situation? Jin Yuxuan said, even Shen Yuanqing didn't stop the monster. It's obviously not a mortal thing. It hasn't been found yet. It must be in danger. Thinking of what happened during the day, the 4 of them actually felt a little relieved. Feng Qingxian said calmly, it's really interesting to take him away without arresting so many priests. I can't figure out whether he has committed too many sins or something. This chapter is not over, please click on the next page to continue reading. Jian Nankaiu said, it's better not to let the divine attendant hear this. Feng Qingxian said, since Zhang Zizai is definitely out of luck and the divine attendant has ended the test ahead of schedule, who will Tai Chi belong to next? Jin Yuxuan said, if Zhang Zizai dies, according to the original rules, it will be given to the winning team, Wan Qian or Bai Shenjin. Feng Qingxian said, Do you think these two people are qualified to represent the temple of sacrifice and fight against those geniuses? They all shook their heads. This farce is really a waste of effort. I think Xueying, Yang'el, Wan Sha, and Shen Qingyu all still have a chance. It is impossible for the divine attendant to give Tai Chi to Wan Jian or Baishan Jinjian, Nankaiu said. So, what happened to Zhang Zizai was quite timely. If he got Tai Chi and was kidnapped, wouldn't Tai Chi be wasted? Feng Qingxian raised a smile on her lips. Feng Shui is changing, some people still laugh too early, haha. Thinking of the current expressions of the 9 immortals, Feng Qingxian couldn't help hiding in the darkness and secretly laughed. She had to hurry up and let Nangong Xueying recover. There would definitely be a new way to decide Tai Kai's ownership tomorrow. Although it is not certain that she will have the last laugh, the 9 immortals will definitely die. Dark, now quiet, not even the origin beast screams tonight. The priests were gathered together, and the news that Zhang Zizai was taken away by the spirits had spread widely. This shows that even if you get 99 sacrificial flags, so what, you will die before you get Tai Chi. Zhang Zizai, retribution has come too early. Nangong Xueying was still lying on the stretcher. Feng Qingxian applied medicine to her at the side and said, every evil deed will be punished. For example, the sinful King Zilan. Now Zhang Zizai has lost his life. In a few days, Zhang Junjian will also be beheaded. This will King Zilan will have no descendants. Priest, do I still have a chance? Feng Qingxian nodded and said, if Zhang Zizai is sure to be dead, you and Yang'el will probably still compete, but the divine attendant will definitely not take the risk of causing such trouble again. Next, think about how to defeat Yang'el head-on. No problem, Nangong Xueying nodded, looking into the night with cold eyes, unable to help but sneer. In the dark night, the woman in black skirt gently patted the girl on the shoulder. Princess, after this accident, we should leave tomorrow. Okay. Princess Shenxiao stood up, her white feet stepping on the wet leaves, and her back gradually disappeared into the darkness. Holy Dragon Totem. Author, Feng Qingyang. Chapter 117. Since Zhang Zizai regained consciousness, he felt endless soreness and pain all over his body, and his muscles were weak. Let alone fighting, at this time he could only feel that he was lying on the cold floor, and the endless coldness was crawling up his body like a poisonous insect. Inside his body, the Tianqian fire dragon qi still existed, but the key was that his muscles were completely sore. Not to mention getting up to fight, he couldn't even move a finger. It was even a little difficult to say that the whole person felt very weak, especially the little brother, who seemed to have completely lost his spirit and even felt a little pain. Damn, I didn't let that monster suck all my yang energy. This was the first thought that came to his mind after he woke up and found that his whole body was so weak and his face was so pale. I really want to cry, but I have no tears. Could it be that the precious and pure first time was so tragically explained? As expected, misfortunes never come singly. Such a thing happened at home. Seeing that he was about to get Tai Chi, he suddenly encountered such an inexplicable disaster. Zhang Zizai felt that this must be the unfairness of God. There are so many worshippers on the Fog Island, why did that strange monster target him? The only thing to be thankful for is that he is not dead yet. What kind of pervert is this monster? I won't let it be raised as a tool for sexual gratification. Such an encounter is both funny and sad. If there are not so many things to defend in my heart, I really want to die. After about an hour, Zhang Zizai finally sobered up a little. He opened his eyes and found that this was actually underground. He was in a cave. There was mud and rocks above, below, left and right. It was extremely damp and cold. There were many poisonous insects moving around, and even climbed onto Zhang Zizai's body. The rocks above were still dripping water, and he was soaked all over. That monster is gone, he didn't hear any movement for an hour. At this time, his body recovered some strength and he struggled to stand up. This monster is so scary that it can make me feel weak all over. The sudden fatigue when I first entered Kiri's image should be related to this monster. Thinking about it, it should be almost certain. He just stood up and his vision was finally clear, but the next moment, he was stunned again, with a creepy feeling. Because less than 10 feet away from him, there was a water-like beast, looking at him with its head raised. This means that it should have been here all this time, but it didn't make any sound. Pervert, it could transform into a human form before, and now it's a beast. Zhang Zizai stared at it and took a few steps back. He wanted to resist, but his physical condition told him that his current combat power was probably no different from before he got the natal totem. Fortunately, the monster just tilted its head and looked at him, and didn't ravage him again. Suddenly, it turned around and walked deeper into the cave. After a few steps, it turned back and glared at Zhang Zizai. "Let me follow." Zhang Zizai quickly understood what it meant. Only if he followed, the monster would not look back. He followed the monster and walked with difficulty. After a few steps, the front suddenly opened up and a large underground space appeared. Zhang Zizai's eyes were immediately attracted by the central position of the underground space, because there was a shining crystal coffin placed in that position. It was this crystal coffin that illuminated the underground space and made the atmosphere here a little less scary. But when Zhang Zizai looked closely and found that there was a person lying in the crystal coffin, his heart was hanging again. At this time, the monster had jumped onto the crystal coffin and waved to Zhang Zizai. Zhang Zizai was oppressed and could only walk over. On the way to the crystal coffin, he suddenly found a few big bloody words on the ground, which were obviously written in blood. There were so many people in this underground space who had not come. What kind of words written in blood could be preserved for such a long time? He looked carefully and saw the words, "No life, no death, is the life and death talisman section." What does it mean? No life, no death, is the life and death talisman sect? Zhang Zizai was confused. The life and death talisman sect should be a force, but Zhang Zizai had never heard of it. At least there was no life and death talisman sect in the Yanlong dynasty. He gently bypassed the bloody words and came to the crystal coffin under the guidance of the monster. There was indeed a person in it. It was a dignified woman who looked about 30 years old. She looked about the same young and beautiful as Xuanhuan. Her skin was especially white, her eyes were tightly closed, and her eyelashes were very long. In terms of appearance, she was already a beauty that could overwhelm the city. Zhang Zizai shivered a little. After all, he didn't know if the woman was still alive. "Senior, I'm sorry, I don't know why this pervert brought me here." He was exhausted and a little dizzy, and could only hold the crystal coffin with his hands to barely stand. Unexpectedly, at this time, the monster suddenly whimpered, looking extremely sad. It jumped off the crystal coffin and suddenly hit the lid of the crystal coffin from the side, knocking the lid out directly. "What are you doing?" Zhang Zizai was unstable and almost fell into the crystal coffin. At this time, the coffin lid had been opened, and the woman could be seen more clearly. She lay quietly with her hands on her abdomen, as if holding something, peaceful and serene. Zhang Zizai noticed that her fingers were still broken, indicating that the words "no life, no death, is the life and death talisman sect" were written by her. At this moment, perhaps because of the air outside the crystal coffin, the woman turned into powder quickly, leaving no clothes or bones. In a blink of an eye, there was only a thin layer of pearl powder at the bottom of the crystal coffin. At this time, the monster rolled beside it, crying loudly, and the sound was very sad. She must have died for a long time, and she will turn directly after the coffin lid is opened. Zhang Zizai looked at the crystal coffin and then at the crying monster, and he felt a little strange. Did it bring me here not to eat me? This crying monster made Zhang Zizai a little puzzled. That was definitely a real feeling, indicating that the woman had a very good relationship with it. While he was wondering, suddenly, he found two things at the bottom of the crystal coffin. He remembered one of them. It was the jade pendant held in the woman's hands before. It was pure white and carved with trees, flowers, and plants. Unexpectedly, the clothes turned into powder, but the jade pendant was still there. The other one appeared at the head of the crystal coffin, probably at the position of the woman's chest before. It was a light green talisman with vitality. The totem pattern of the talisman was extremely complex, so complex that it exceeded Zhang Zizai's imagination. He had never seen such a talisman, and it was obvious that this talisman could still be used. Zhang Zizai was deeply attracted when he saw this talisman for the first time. This is definitely a divine object between heaven and earth. Those patterns have such a sense of ingenuity. Wonderful and shocking, just one look will give you a feeling of enlightenment. Wu Wu the spirit was still weeping. Its claws grew longer and split into two. It grabbed the jade pendant and the talisman respectively and sent them to Zhang Zizai. "Give it to me." Zhang Zizai was a little stunned. He had always thought that he was dead this time, but now the situation seemed to be different. The spirit nodded very affirmatively. Zhang Zizai then put away the jade pendant and the light green talisman. When Zhang Zizai caught the cold jade pendant and the talisman, the spirit's claw suddenly turned into a sharp blade, cutting Zhang Zizai's fingers, and his blood instantly seeped into the snow-white jade pendant. The next moment, Zhang Zizai and the jade pendant had a magical connection. The flowers, plants, and trees on the jade pendant suddenly came alive, with the magical charm of totem patterns. It turned out that the jade pendant was something equivalent to a totem weapon. "It's a space jade pendant." Zhang Zizai was really shocked. He never thought that he could get the space jade pendant. Because he knew that it was an extremely rare thing. He currently knew that there was only one person who had this space jade pendant. That was his father, Zhang Yunting. Holy Dragon Totem. Author, Fengqing Yang. Chapter 118. In fact, if his father had not shown him his magical space jade pendant, Zhang Zizai would not have known that there would be such a magical item in the world. The space jade pendant is essentially a totem magic weapon. It is a totem pattern drawn on a spiritual mine. However, the totem pattern and spiritual mine involved are very rare and difficult to draw. Zhang Yunting said that the highest level totem spiritual master of the Yanlong dynasty could not create a space jade pendant. Moreover, the totem pattern of the space jade pendant has actually been lost long ago. It is said that the pattern was copied on a magical space totem in ancient times. Countless generations of masters spent their entire lives studying it before integrating it. The loss of such inheritance is a regret for the entire world of totem martial artists. The spiritual mine material of the space jade pendant is a very high-grade empty spirit stone. The empty spirit stone is very rare. It is estimated that there are not many in the entire Yanlong dynasty. The lack of materials, totem patterns, and totem spiritual masters has led to the fact that it is impossible for a new space jade pendant to be born now. The space jade pendant looks like a jade pendant, but in fact, it has a void space inside. Although it cannot allow life to survive, it can store items that are carried with you. Some people have strong assets, and it is very safe to store them in this space jade pendant. Although this thing cannot enhance combat power, many masters with a lot of wealth need it. For example, Zhang Yunting has a space jade pendant. When he was a child, he actually performed magic in front of Zhang Zizai. At that time, the children thought he was a god, and he could always take out incredible things. If he had not been born in the King Jiang's mansion, he might not know that there is such a divine object as the space jade pendant in this world. And now, Zhang Zizai has obviously become the user of this space jade pendant. It is said that as long as you calm down and concentrate, you can connect to the internal space, and you can take out the things inside with a thought. Is there something in it? He learned Zhang Yunting's method to feel that space. This is mainly a spiritual communication. His soul in the heavenly realm is already quite strong, and invading the space jade pendant is not a problem at all. Soon, he saw the space. It was not too big. The length, width, and height were each about 10 feet, barely equivalent to a storage room. There was only one thing in it. That was books. There were probably hundreds of books piled together. From the bottom to the top, the books seemed to be thicker and neater as they piled up. He took out the top one. Although it was old, the book was spotless. The pages were thin gold and could be preserved for a long time. He took a closer look and saw 4 big characters on the cover: Life and Death Talisman Sect. This woman was obviously from the Life and Death Talisman Sect, and these books should all be books of the Life and Death Talisman Sect. He opened the cover and turned to the first page. It was written, Star Talisman, Immortality, Healing Talisman. Turning to the back, it was a bit similar to the book that Xuanhuan gave him. There were templates with totem patterns, many experiences of predecessors, and their notes on each key point. With such detailed notes, it was not difficult to learn by oneself. Zhang Zizai was delighted. He naturally knew that he might have obtained the rune books of the Life and Death Talisman Sect. And there were hundreds of them. He picked one in the middle. The cover still said Life and Death Talisman Sect, and on the first page, it said, Moon Level Talisman, Wuxian, Soul Control Talisman. Wuxian, Immortality. Life and Death Talisman Sect? It seems that all the books are divided into 2 parts, Wuxian and Immortality. Immortality is actually a talisman related to treatment, recovery, and assistance, while Wuxian is a talisman with strong lethality, specially born for killing. Zhang Zizai was a little dazed. These talisman books were obviously very precious. He was thinking, could it be that he was blessed in disguise this time? The monster didn't want to harm him at all, but brought him here to give him a chance. As for why so many priests chose him, it must be because his soul realm is high and he is very young. He is obviously the most suitable person to inherit the Life and Death Talisman Sect. The only thing that still made him panic was that his body was still sore and weak, and he felt hollowed out. If he was going to give himself good fortune, why did he torture himself like this? He flipped through a few books, and he didn't dare to look at the books at the bottom. One book had thousands of pages. He wanted to flip through them, but found that he had no strength to open them. He estimated that even if he was in his prime, he couldn't open them. Woo woo. When Zhang Zizai held the space jade pendant, the monster moved again, and its knife fingers stretched out again, cutting Zhang Zizai's right hand. The blood on his right hand instantly seeped into the light green talisman. That was another strange thing besides the space jade pendant. When Zhang Zizai's blood melted into the talisman actually shattered and disappeared, but the complex light green totem patterns in it melted into Zhang Zizai's body, like a tattoo, wandering from the fingers, along the arms, and into the body, and finally seemed to appear in the chest. Zhang Zizai opened his clothes and found that the talisman was indeed on his chest. It twisted for a while and turned into the original talisman, like a tattoo on his chest, completely integrated with his body. At this time, the emerald green lines were emitting an oily green light and a strong breath of life, which gradually made Zhang Zizai feel refreshed. He didn't know what it was, but he knew that the magical talisman was obviously integrated with his body. Its position is exactly where the Zayu given by Princess Shenxiao is. The Zayu is attached to the chest, blocking the light green talisman. This chapter is not over yet, please click the next page to continue reading. Suddenly, a drastic change occurred. The light green totem pattern suddenly emitted a strong light, swallowing the Zayu. Bang! The Zayu given by Princess Shenxiao turned into powder and dissipated in an instant. When the light burst out, the light green pattern on the chest turned gray, as if it was dead, almost unnoticeable. But the green light before, flooded Zhang Zizai's whole body, and in a very short time, Zhang Zizai felt so comfortable that he wanted to shout. It was so cool. When the green light spread through his body like a warm current, he found that his previous fatigue, muscle weakness, and mental depression all disappeared, and he instantly recovered to a perfect state. He was full of explosive power, his vision was clear, his soul became strong, and even the most important thing was that even the little brother held his head high and was full of masculinity. He was not afraid of 10 beautiful women in front of him. This instantaneous change was like returning to perfection from a near-death state in an instant. The span was so large that Zhang Zizai was a little uncomfortable. He glanced at his chest and found that the talisman had indeed become gray, but about 1/1000th of the lines showed light green. He observed for a while and found that the light green was recovering. Maybe after a while, the talisman could return to being all green. Oh my god, where is Zayu? Zhang Zizai just found out that Zayu was gone. He had some impression that it seemed to have been swallowed by the green light just now. Now it has disappeared, which means it must have been shattered. This is the relic of Xiao's grandmother. She just lent it to me to help me improve my strength. Now it's gone. This is terrible. How should I explain to her? Zhang Zizai was suddenly worried. After all, he knew how important the relic of his grandmother was to Princess Shenxiao. She was willing to lend it to him because she trusted him. But now it was lost in his hands. Naturally, he could only feel guilty. This talisman is strange. It was also what helped me recover it just now, but why did it destroy Zayu? To be honest, Zhang Zizai still liked the dragon-shaped jade pendant. The dragon was carved lifelike and particularly suitable for him. It also represented Xiao's good intentions. If I can return to Yanlongxiu, I will apologize to her again, Zhang Zizai thought. Now, he put away the space jade pendant, and the talisman was also integrated into his body. He also recovered to a perfect state, and even improved. He looked at the empty crystal coffin, and then looked at the spirit. He bowed his hands and said, "Maybe I blamed you wrongly. You gave me such a good thing. I know that the senior must have unfinished business when he left the inheritance. He wants me to help her complete it. Can you tell me what I need to do for her?" The spirit was still crying. It staggered and walked to the blood words and pointed at them. "No life, no death, is the life and death talisman section." Perhaps, what she wanted to say, she wanted the inheritor to complete her unfinished wish for her, all in these 10 words. "I understand. I can't do anything now, but in the future, I will be grateful and pursue the responsibilities I need to shoulder behind these 10 words." She chose herself and brought great fortune to herself. My father said that as a person, you must repay a drop of kindness with a spring. With such a great fortune, Zhang Zizai must know what to do. Perhaps the spirit has been observing me on Kirishima for such a long time just to see my character and ability, so it decided to take action after the Battle of Kirishima. Zhang Zizai wanted to ask some more questions, but he didn't expect that at this moment, the mountain suddenly collapsed and the ground cracked, and this underground space seemed to collapse. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Holy Dragon Totem. Author, Fengqing Yang. Chapter 119. Bang. A huge rock fell beside Zhang Zizai and smashed the crystal coffin directly. Woo woo, the spirit seemed to have anticipated this change long ago. It looked even more sad, but it moved quickly. Like last time, it quickly wrapped Zhang Zizai. This time Zhang Zizai could see very clearly, and it was not uncomfortable at all, and it was very comfortable. It was the feeling of being surrounded by a ball of warm water. After the spirit wrapped Zhang Zizai, it controlled Zhang Zizai's body to move quickly, and the movement was very swift. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. In the darkness, It took Zhang Zizai away from here. The sound of the cave collapsing kept coming from behind. This place that had existed for who knows how many years was finally going to be destroyed because of the disappearance of some power or deliberate arrangement. The sound of destruction made Zhang Zizai feel sorry for the woman. She just lay there quietly, waiting for so many years, and finally waited for herself. What regrets did she have in her life? Fortunately, there was the spirit guarding, otherwise, how lonely it would be. No life, no death, that is the life and death talisman section. What she wanted to tell Zhang Zizai was all in these 10 words. It was a very simple sentence, but it contained helplessness and unwillingness. She must have left with regrets in the end, and the collapsed cave was destroying everything. I don't know when, Zhang Zizai rushed out from the underground and returned to the fog island, which was shrouded in mist and was no different from before. The monster left his body and turned into a small beast, looking at Zhang Zizai. Are you going with me? Woo-woo, it shook its head firmly, and then rushed into the small, almost undetectable hole without looking back. The ground was still shaking, indicating that it was still collapsing. Since it went back, it was obvious that it wanted to be buried with the woman. Finally, even the small hole collapsed, and this underground space completely disappeared from this world. Everything returned to peace. Senior, please rest in peace. Zhang Zizai took a deep breath, he knelt on the ground, and kowtowed 3 times and 9 times. The spirit chose to go back at this time, obviously, it didn't want to come out again. What kind of person is this, who can make a spirit guard her like this? Everything is a mystery. Zhang Zizai knew that one day, those 10 words would give him the answer. He looked at the 2 things he got. The light green mysterious talisman is now grayish-white and tattooed on his chest. He kept the space jade pendant. Checking again, he found that in addition to the classics, there were 2 other things. A spiritual wood pen and a talisman inkstone. The spiritual wood pen is a bit like a branch, simple and old, with quite complex totem patterns on it, but it is dim and dull. It may be too long, causing the totem patterns to have failed, leaving less than 1% of the patterns with a little light. As for the talisman inkstone, it is a talisman inkstone with a dragon head, which is pitch black and very domineering. The eyes of the dragon head sculpture are very bright and full of evil spirits, which is completely opposite to the spiritual wood pen. A closer look revealed 2 words on the spirit wood pen, living spirit. And on the talisman inkstone, there were also 2 words, dead spirit. Living spirit pen, dead spirit inkstone. These are the treasures that the senior used to draw talismans. Unfortunately, it's too old and I don't know if it can be used. Such top-level totem patterns mean that it must be a top-level treasure. In addition to the living spirit pen and the dead spirit inkstone, there are hundreds of talisman books, nothing else. But Zhang Zizai knew that the mysterious talisman on his chest might be more valuable. The fortune he got this time was indeed a bit big. And it was a false alarm. He looked at the vast jungle. It's terrible. They must think I'm dead. If I give the Tai Chi that I worked so hard to get to Yongle and Nangong Shuiying, it would be a big loss. He didn't know how many days he had been unconscious. Besides, Xiaoyu and Panda must be worried. The family is already in trouble enough. If something happens to me again, my mother will be even more distressed if she knows. Zhang Zizai knows that he must hurry to report that he is safe. Sister Juxian, will you look for me? He suddenly remembered her. She was his priest. She must be worried that he was suddenly abducted. And Xiao Zhao is there too. He doesn't know where he is now. Without Wanqian, he is like a blind man in this fog island. There are also source beasts everywhere. He can only speed up and move in one direction. His movements are more obvious so that Wanqian can see him. I hope I won't be unconscious for too long. If it takes too long, the 6 prefectures festival will be held, let alone Tai Chi. Maybe all the disasters have already happened. To be honest, Zhang Zizai hasn't been as nervous as he is now for a long time. Thinking of the way his mother looked when she knew the news about him, the Six Prefectures Festival, Lu Yuan's execution, Zhang Yuning and Xiao Yu, he knew that time was too important to him. What he wanted now was that he would not be unconscious for too long. He wanted someone to be on this island, otherwise even if he survived, he would not be able to leave the island. He could not go back to the vast ocean by himself. By the time he went back, the flowers would be cold. He struggled to move forward, even at the risk of danger and making a lot of noise. For an hour, his heart was in agony, and he did not get the joy of good fortune at all. Zhang Zizai. Suddenly, Zhang Zizai heard her calling him. At that moment, he felt extremely at ease, all the panic suddenly disappeared, and only warmth surrounded him. It was her voice, full of surprise, and with a little sob, she finally found him. Juxian. I only heard her voice, but I didn't see her. It should be that Wanqian was around her and had seen me. Zhang Zizai stayed where he was, looking in the direction of the sound, waiting for her arrival. Sure enough, at this moment, her figure appeared in the thick fog, with jade-like skin, a white dress, and a faint fragrance. Zhang Zizai saw that her eyes were a little hazy, and her expression was a little haggard. She was not as charming and seductive as before, but it was just like this that showed how much she cared about him. With a whoosh, she appeared in front of him, hugged him heavily, and wished that Zhang Zizai could be rubbed into her full arms. At that moment, she was full of fragrance, and all she felt was hot happiness. You little bad boy, you're so scary, just alive. Her voice was indeed a little choked, her slender hands were full of strength, Zhang Zizai's face was completely pressed against the fragrant jade, and she was so happy that she was bleeding from her nose. In fact, I didn't expect that she would care about me so much. Now all her emotions, even the strength of her arms, are so real. Heartbeat. Brother. Behind Juxian, Ruo Xiaoyu, Lu Dingxing, Bai Shenjin, and Wanqian came together, and they were all very surprised. Just seeing Zhang Zizai and Juxian hugging so tightly and such a fragrant scene, they didn't move forward. This time, Zhang Zizai really felt like he had escaped death. Seeing them again, everyone was fine, and that feeling of happiness was really great. He remembered the promise Juxian had given him. When she hugged him, he thought that he shouldn't be beaten at such a sweet moment, so he quietly reached out his hand and pinched that part. Holy Dragon Totem. Author, Fengqing Yang. Chapter 120. The touch is so good. Zhang Zizai felt like he was dreaming, and he was reluctant to let go of his palm. Bang! He was pushed out and hit the tree behind him. He groaned and his bones were about to fall apart. Juxian's face was red, staring at him, and he raised his hand to slap him several times, but then put it down again. She really didn't expect that he would do such a thing secretly at such a sentimental time. It was really funny. Sister Juxian, what's wrong? Ruo Xiaoyu was a little confused. Why did she suddenly push him away after hugging him? No, nothing, I'm just annoyed that he makes people worry too much. Juxian couldn't tell the truth, so she could only glare at Zhang Zizai fiercely. Zhang Zizai still recalled that in that perfect touch, he giggled at her. Dare to be a hooligan to me, see how I will deal with you tonight. When he was proud, he saw her mouth shape, which was still a little creepy. But Zhang Zizai was not afraid, at most he would be sentimental again. He quickly turned his eyes away, opened his arms, and said to Lu Dingxing and the others, surprise, your boss has been reborn from the dead, and the king has returned, unharmed. Lu Dingxing and the others came up, knocked, and said, it's really nothing, didn't the monster eat you? I saw you being eaten with my own eyes, Wanqian said. It's a long story. How many days have I been missing? Ruo Xiaoyu still had tears in her eyes. She said, "It's been 4 days. You don't know how we have been these days. You still have the mind to laugh so happily. Yesterday, the God servant took everyone away, and only we were left to find you. We are all desperate, brother." As she spoke, tears still flowed down. "Xiao Yu, I'm sorry." Zhang Zizai hugged her and said, "This time it was really an accident, and I can't do anything about it. I will never make you sad in the future. Brother, I know, now that I see you are okay, I am happy enough. It doesn't matter how much worry and sadness I had before. After all, she is still young, and it's enough to panic when encountering such a thing. Fortunately, Sister Juxian comforted me and promised me that she would definitely help me find you." She looked at Juxian, and her eyes completely regarded her as a sister-in-law. Juxian smiled slightly, and suddenly, she hurriedly said, "Let's go quickly and return to Yanlongxiu. They have been on the road for a day. These few days, Jianankaiu and Feng Qingxian, the two bitches, have been talking too much in front of the gods. In addition, the gods have not found you for 3 days and have almost given up. If we don't go back quickly, your Tai Chi will be taken advantage of by others. Damn it! If it really takes advantage of others, then all the efforts will be in vain. Follow me." Indeed, returning to the sacrifice temple is urgent. The Jishin has already left. How do we get back? On the way, he hurriedly asked Juxian. "There are 9 spare small Jishin in the Jishin, each can accommodate about 10 people, and the god servant left a small Jishin for us," Lu Dingxing said. Zhang Ziyi was relieved at this point. Juxian said, "I use my true energy to drive it, and my speed is faster than the Jishin. I will try to get there before they go back." They immediately boarded the small Jishin outside the Wudao island. This is the reduced Jishin. There are 3 or 4 rooms in the cabin. Juxian is in the cockpit. If Xiaoyu is a girl, she has a room alone, and then Zhang Zizai and Lu Dingxing have one, Bai Shenjin and Wanqian have one. After boarding the small Jishin and starting to ride the wind and waves, they gathered here in Juxian's cockpit. Juxian used her true energy to drive the small Jishin at full speed. She crossed her slender legs, pressed the energy core of the small Jishin with one hand, and then looked at Zhang Zizai with a smile. Only Zhang Zizai dared to look at her. The other teenagers all lowered their heads, not looking at her without permission. "Tell me, what happened?" These were all people Zhang Zizai trusted, so he told the truth. "Space Jade Pendant." Juxian almost jumped up from his chair. "What is that?" Wanqian, Bai Shenjin, and even Lu Dingxing didn't know. Zhang Zizai explained it again, and they looked incredible, not knowing that there was such a magical thing in the world. Life and Death Talisman Sect. Juxian fell into deep thought, then shook his head and said, "I have been in the Yanlong dynasty for so many years, and I have never heard of it. From your description, it may be a long time ago, even dating back to before the Yanlong dynasty." Even she didn't know. It was indeed not easy to know. "Anyway, you have obtained the fortune of a force with talismans as its sect, but if this is spread out, it will actually bring you disaster, so no one can tell about the life and death talisman sect, including old man Xiao, understand?" Juxian warned. "Your Excellency Master, you can't tell me either." Juxian nodded and said, "I can't tell you for now. He is a talisman master. The sect classics like yours are too tempting for him. It's inevitable that he will get into trouble." Zhang Zizai nodded. After all, he and Xiao Yushin didn't spend much time together. "The boss trusts us, so we will never say too much," Bai Shenjin and Wang Jian said. In fact, on this trip to Wudao, Zhang Zizai's help and arrangement allowed them to get what they wanted, that is, dignity. Now, they have long been like brothers. "Let me see that mysterious talisman." Juxian let the god sacrifice go freely. She stood up, walked in front of Zhang Zizai, and naturally opened Zhang Zizai's collar. Don't look at it if it's indecent. Bai Shenjin and the others quickly covered their eyes and dared not look anymore. Oh my god, don't be so exaggerated. Zhang Zizai didn't know whether to laugh or cry. They had to cover their eyes just to look at the chest. Boss, we think that being here affects you a little bit, haha. Bai Shenjin laughed awkwardly. Don't talk nonsense. Juxian was concentrating on looking at the grey talisman. Zhang Zizai looked down and found that the green part of the rune had increased a little. Juxian's eyes changed. She looked up at Zhang Zizai and asked, I heard that you were very tired and weak during that time, but after this talisman entered your body, you recovered instantly? Then it dimmed. Zhang Zizai nodded and asked, do you know what talisman this is? Juxian tilted his head and said, this description is similar to a talisman I have heard of before. What is it? Everyone tilted their heads, looking forward to it. It is said that in ancient times, the ancient gods personally created 6 talismans. It is said that each one has the ability to shock the world and make ghosts weep. It has caused countless bloody storms and the fall of dynasties. Until recently, these talismans, known as the 6 great divine talismans, disappeared. The 6 great divine talismans are talismans that totem talisman masters cannot draw at all. They are the gifts of the ancient gods. They are the most terrifying treasures in myths and legends. Zhang Zizai curled his lips. He didn't think that the talisman on his chest would be the 6 great divine talismans of this level. But Juxian looked at the grey talisman seriously and said, I just know that among the 6 great talismans, there is one called the Immortality Talisman. It is said that the owner of the Immortality Talisman will never die. Even if he is on the verge of death, the Immortality Talisman can instantly restore him to a perfect state and restore his full combat power. Of course, it is said that it can only be used once every period of time. Do you think this is the Immortality Talisman among the 6 great talismans? Zhang Zizai's eyes widened. He believed it. It sounded very similar. Although he was not on the verge of death at that time, he was instantly restored to perfection. That was true. The others suffocated. Haha, Juxian suddenly laughed so hard that he fell forward and backward. I'm kidding you. Just this broken talisman, and the 6 great talismans, you still believe it, haha. Juxian stared at Zhang Zizai, who looked depressed, and she was happy in her heart. She knew that Zhang Zizai must have believed it, and just when she was happy, she poured a basin of cold water on him. The revenge of that touch was finally avenged.